everybody, welcome back. Again, my name is Ethan Anderson. I'm the owner and director of Foothills Agua Fria in Peoria, Arizona. And I'm going to show you a few more intermediate exercises to keep your hips strong and mobile. The first exercise that we're going to go over today is called the single leg hip internal external rotation. It's very simple to execute. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to start in standing. We're going to stand on one leg. So I'm going to be standing on my right leg. And for the external rotation, we're going to rotate my body away from my right leg. So I'm going to be opening up my hip and then just tapping my toe on the opposite side to maintain a little bit of balance. Also want to make sure that I'm keeping my core tight so that way I'm nice and stable as I move. Want to have a little bit of a bend in your knee so you're not locking your knee out. You should feel just a little bit of a stretch through the front of your hip. Now this activity isn't so much a stretch as it is more for mobility. So we're going to go more for repetitions, 15 to 20 times, versus like our two-way hip stretch that we did before, where we're holding that for 30 seconds to 45 seconds. Now the opposite of that exercise is the internal rotation. So again, I'm going to start with my right foot, and instead of rotating out and opening my hip, I'm actually going to step across my right foot, so that way I'm internally rotating my right hip. Same cues, a little bit of a bend in the knee, and you should be feeling a little bit of a stretch through the outside of your hip instead of through the inside of your hip. And again, more for mobility, so we're not looking for a held and sustained stretch. We want to go to the end range and then slowly control back. And that's the single leg hip internal external rotation. All right, the next intermediate hip exercise we're going to do is a basic hip hinge. So this is an advancement of the hip bridge exercise that we did laying down before. So what you're going to do, you're going to start in standing. Your feet are going to be shoulder width apart, a little bit of a slight bend in the knee, and your cue, keeping your core tight, you're going to bring your butt backwards as your trunk goes forward, but you want to keep your trunk straight. That way most of the motion is coming from the hip. That's why we call it a hip hinge. Now you're going to go down until you feel a stretch in your hamstrings, and then as you come back up, I want you to squeeze your butt together. That's what's going to get that hip extension activation as we come back up to standing. Now where we're doing this in standing versus laying down on the floor or on a bed, I want to make sure that you're doing this in a safe environment. So making sure that you have something that you can support yourself in case you get dizzy or you get too tired is very important. Again, we want to do this nice and slow and controlled so we feel a stretch in the hamstrings, and then fire the glutes, squeezing the bottom until we come back up. All right, the next intermediate hip exercise that we're going to do is a simple front lunge. So again, we're going to start in standing. I want my feet about shoulder width apart, and I'm going to bring one foot forward to where I'm in a walking position, and then I'm going to bend down and come back up. And then I'm going to switch my legs. I'm going to bring the left forward, come down and come back up. Again, where we're doing this in standing, we want to make sure we're in a safe environment. So if you get down and you have any sort of issues, you've got something where you can support yourself to get back into your standing position. But this can also be modified a lot of different ways. So you can go out really far. If you're able to, you can get a little bit more of a stretch to the front of your hip that way, as well as makes it more difficult. You can start very simple, just with a light knee bend, versus doing the same distance of a step with more of a knee bend, almost actually getting your knee all the way to the floor. So the main thing is just making sure that you're safe and you're comfortable. So I want you to start again in that step position and just go down as far as you're comfortable and come back up. Same thing on the left side. And then as you progress and as you get stronger, you can go a little bit lower with the same distance of a step. Or you can actually start to go out a lot further on your lunge. Main thing again, we want to keep our core tight and move slow and controlled, so that way the muscles are working the whole time that we're doing the anterior lunge. Okay, the last intermediate hip exercise we're going to do is actually a side plank. A lot of people equate this more to a core exercise, but that's more for if you're doing the exercise and you're holding it for a certain time versus doing it for repetitions. So when we're working the lateral side of our hip, we're going to be actually doing it for repetitions versus time, but it's still great for a core exercise as well. So the starting position, you're going to be on your side, on your elbow, and usually I'll tell people if you've got a pad, like a yoga pad or a rug that you can do this on, it'll make it a little bit easier for you. Or you can simply grab a pillow or a blanket, something that's not going to slip on whatever floor you're on, and put it under your elbow so that way it gives you a little bit of padding. So when we're here, we want our trunk nice and aligned, supporting ourselves on our elbow. Other hand goes onto the hip, and you're going to lift your body up, activating this bottom hip, and then back down. Again, you want to make sure that your core is tight the whole time, otherwise you're going to be flopping around and you're not going to get the hip work that we're looking for. Again, hip, shoulders, knees all in a nice straight line, front to back, hand on the hip, and we're going to lift, and then back down. The longer you hold at the lift, the more you're going to work your core, and the more you're going to work your hip. To begin, we just want to go with repetitions, up and down, nice and slow and controlled, versus as you get a little bit more advanced, or you want to concentrate a little bit more on the core itself and not as much on the muscles of the hip, we can go up and we can actually hold this position for 20 or 30 seconds. All right, those are some simple intermediate hip exercises that you can do at home. If you have any other questions, be sure to visit us at foothillsrehab.com for more.